HR tech, work tech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the Work Tech Podcast. Join host George LaRocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by OneWorkTech.com and the Work Defined Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Work Tech. It's me, George LaRocque, and I've got one of my favorite topics today. We're going to be spending some time discussing frontline hiring. This is probably one of the areas in the market that has been, and I think will continue to be, most disrupted by artificial intelligence. Case in point, our guest, Yong Kim, is the co-founder and CEO of Wonolo. Wonolo just announced the release of a new AI-powered job manager and platform. And Yong, welcome to Work Tech. Excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, thank you, George. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive in and discuss all things frontline work.
Yeah. So for anyone that might not be aware of Wonolo, could you tell us a little bit about just a quick intro of Wonolo and, of course, of yourself as well?
Yeah, so we are a labor marketplace platform. The easiest way to think about us is the next generation staffing solution for frontline work. So we exclusively focus on hourly work that cater for frontline type jobs, whether it's in the light industrial or hospitality. We came up with the solution about 10 years ago when my co-founder and we were working at Coca-Cola warehouse, and then we saw their managers and supervisors constantly juggling with workers not showing up or having hiring issues. And when we saw the workers market, there are plenty of workers constantly looking for jobs, but why is it that managers and supervisors couldn't find workers in the way that was seamless for both sides, both hiring side and then the worker side? And we thought that the existing traditional staffing services were not addressing the issue in the right way. So we wanted to infuse technology, use some of the automations to help alleviate some of those problems. And then fast forward 10 years, we're still going strong.
That's great. That's great. And so when you think about those 10 years and the company's evolution, tell us about that. Like, how has the frontline hiring, high volume hiring market evolved, and how has, Wonolo evolved with it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I want to definitely caveat with the fact that last 4 years, during COVID and post-COVID, definitely upended the market and the trends. But overall, as you rightly pointed out, frontline hiring is quite different from, say, office type, roles, right? Like if you need a marketing person, then you can go through the proper, the traditional process of getting the resumes, going through rounds of interviews and find that person. In frontline situation, it typically deals with larger volume, more ups and downs of demands and unpredictable situations. So if a warehouse manager needs 20 workers in the next few days just because they received a huge order after Thanksgiving break, then it is very difficult for recruiters to go out and find 20 workers in an immediate way. Initially, when we launched our solution, we focused on those situations where it really requires on-demand needs that are unpredictable. And these are the roles that traditional staffing agencies failed and job boards and other methods quite didn't address. So we really honed it on addressing the on-demand problems. And then as we scaled and matured, we realized that this problem, dealing with large volume, inconsistency, worker turnover, still existed for longer term duration jobs. And we wanted to think differently about how we address those issues. So with the emergence of AI and everyone thinking through how that fits into making everyone's job more efficient, we wanted to think about how to leverage that in our next iteration of the solution, and that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah. So I want to dig into that solution, but backing up a little bit, what does your ideal customer look like? What industries, sizes, other factors?
Yeah. So our sweet spot of customers are what we call kind of mid-market and up. So typically, these customers may have some HR function, some talent acquisition team, not necessarily full-blown, 200-person team, but they have some function, and they have the operational team that constantly deals with the frontline related operational issues. And typically these issues arise from the worker turnovers or hiring issues. So the operations teams and HR teams are constantly going back and forth on dealing with these issues. And this happens quite often on the mid-market type companies. And then we go all the way up to enterprises where they have different locations all over the US. Each location has different needs and types of problems that they deal with. And that's those are in terms of the size, like where we focus on. Industries, we go after industries that rely heavily on frontline workers. So whether it's on the logistics, warehouse, supply chain, manufacturing, hospitality, food productions, what you may call kind of the blue collar line of work, that's where we have been heavily focusing on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that your sort of next generation staffing platform, but you're also sort of at the intersection of staffing and those marketplaces, right? Like you have a big online presence from a candidate perspective. Am I right in that perception?
You're absolutely right, and you said it elegantly. And we are unique in that we are exactly at that intersection, using your word, which is, on one hand, we may seem like we are a technology company, but on the other hand, we are dealing with workers on a daily basis. So there's the human component as well. So the secret sauce for us is, how do we marry the two, the tech and the human touch, in a way that the users, whether it's from the hiring manager's perspective or the worker's perspective, the experience is as if they are really being cared for, instead of like, here's the tool, you are left on your own and do whatever you want. And what we have found is that in staffing or recruiting, that doesn't quite work, because we are, at the end of the day, dealing with human emotions, right? So when there are issues at the job, or when workers have personal issues so that they can't come to the job, all these things need to be addressed in a way that makes the manager's job easier, and then the workers' lives much more seamless. So we have to have some human components. And the question is then, how do we make that experience significantly better?
Yeah. I really like that. And especially in the context that you've just released an AI product. So let's talk about that. What is this new release, and where does that fit in to Wonolo's offering?
Yeah. So, George, if you think about the moment that a hiring manager decides that I need, 20, 30, 50 workers, and then all the way to workers showing up, doing an amazing job and getting paid, there are a lot of components that need to happen to make that end-to-end experience exceptional, right? The hiring manager has to get the right, quality type workers. The workers have to feel like they are getting the job that they believe they can do a great job on, and it's the right job. It's close to home, easy commute, all these things, and at the right wage as well. And there are a lot of people that are involved in making that happen, right? There are recruiters, operational managers, warehouse managers, and then there's the payroll people. So the question for us was, there are a lot of hands that are touching this process. And for large volume, high turnover jobs, the only way to address all the kinks along the way is just hire more people, right? Like hire more recruiters, hire more ops people. So we thought a lot about, how do we empower every single person along the way so that they can really focus on high value tasks, and then anything that's repetitive, anything that slows them down, we can leverage AI to take the burden away from them. So, for example, for recruiters, candidates apply at all hours, right? 2 a.m. when they are up at night, just going through the job board, or they feel like they want to talk to someone at 6 a.m. because they get up and then they're panicked and they want to have some payrolls. So our AI, we have AI, we call it Wendy. Wendy can immediately reach out to candidates the moment they apply, make sure that it's the right job, make sure that they're the right person with the right skills, which in turn makes the recruiter's job significantly easier. And then from a worker's perspective, our AI job management platform provides all the pertinent information, even to the details of how to get to the job and who to check in with, and then what the break schedule looks like, so that they have higher understanding of what the job entails, which in turn lowers their retention or churn risk from a hiring person's perspective. So that's kind of how we approach this problem.
Yeah, and so that human element that you mentioned, I'm making an assumption that the humans can jump in the loop at any given point in time based on the priority that you mentioned around that human experience. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yes. And then as you said, every company operates differently. Every recruiter or managers has different prioritizations or types of workers that they need. So it is often difficult from a tech developer's perspective to just provide one-size-fits-all solution in the hope that it works. But at the same time, we cannot build custom tools for everyone. So, how do we do that is the question. And I think that's where AI fits in, where it's robust enough to help, fit into the different situations in the way that either customers or workers need. And that flexibility is part of kind of the crux of our solution that we're providing.
Yeah, the candidate's experience is one that I'm really curious about the value, given your focus there. How does this product change the experience for them? What's improved, or what's the value for them?
Yeah, so most frontline workers that are getting paid hourly, typically, their wages are minimum wage plus, and their experiences in the traditional job field, it's not that great. Like, there's no real acknowledgement of their hard work, gratitude, or just basic courtesy. And when we were developing our solution, we really wanted to put that in the center. So I was quite blown away by the solution that we developed. Initially, I was skeptical, right? Like, everyone has these questions around, like, why would anyone want to talk to AI? Or the moment they realize that it's AI, not real human being, they may be turned off. Interestingly, in our thousands of iterations and pilot tests, candidates actually really enjoy the experience. The AI agent is always complimenting the candidates. They are always accessible, right? So if the candidates are having some issues, or workers have questions about specific things, can reach out to Wendy and then resolve these issues right away, and they don't even have to wait around. So they all of a sudden feel seen, they feel supported, and I think that is something that has been missing in the frontline work, and from that alone has a huge differentiation and the level of appreciation that the workers have been looking for, and obviously we have a long way to go, and we'll continue to improve upon the feedback, but that's kind of the core of what we want to provide to the workers eventually.
Well, that's huge, and one of the biggest issues that we continue to hear, and we've been hearing it for decades from the candidate side, is that lack of transparency, lack of communication, and the ability to know that you're being considered, to know where you stand in the process, to have resolution, good or bad, or moving forward or not. This is what's been missing, and I think it's more complicated. Historically, it's been more complicated than people give it credit for. Yes. Not discounting, some employers have not done a great job, but I think there's a ability now moving forward to deliver on some of these things that were more aspirational or more complex than we credited them for. What about the employer? When you think about the value there, given your role with the employer, how should they perceive this new product and technology? What's the value for them?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we have to ensure that the customers' needs are met. And we are performing according to their expectations, and typically their expectations are the time to fill. We don't want to wait 2 months. By then, we may not even have the needs, so they want the shorter time to fill. They want to make sure that the workers that that are coming through Wonolo are high quality, who can do the job. And ultimately, they want to make sure that the workers stay. The frontline jobs are, notorious for high turnover, right? In case of Amazon, it's over 100%, and hospitality is still dealing with, 60-70% of turnover. So our ability to retain, help them retain workers is critical. So we typically measure ourselves around those kind of three areas, time to fill, are we actually filling the jobs, so fill rate, and then the retention of the workers. And then, we want to make sure that along the way, any administrative issues, whether it's are we paying the workers in the right way, right hours, and doing the right clock in and clock out process, all those administrative things that may add more burden on the customer's front, we want to make sure that we take that away from them. So ultimately, those are the kind of the core quantitative areas that we want to make sure we deliver. But at the same time, there's the human element. This is kind of the flip side of the technology, which is at the end of the day, the roles that talent acquisition professionals and then the operational professionals are dealing with it's quite vast. They have to hire, and then they have to manage, and then they have to run around and make sure that everything is running properly. So to the extent that we can alleviate some of these day-to-day routine burdens, that is something that we want to also address through technology.
Yeah. And in some cases, some of those resources are your resources on site,
Yes,
depending on the volume or the scope. I think that's important. And another thing that I want to make sure you've mentioned, the end-to-end process, including pay. So you're really, when you talk about, that new age, staffing solution, you're very much in that part of the market where it's replacing that traditional staffing firm, if you will.
Yes, that's right. So if you, George, are the hiring manager or the warehouse manager, ultimately what we want to do is don't worry about anything else. We're going to take the whole thing away and make sure that the right workers show up, and then they get paid properly, and then they're retained properly, so that you don't have to deal with any of the issues from end to end.
Yep. Yep. And so a lot of this is driven to help you meet your agreements with customers, the SLAs, service level agreements, and those KPIs that you outlined. So leveraging AI really holistically from a quality, from an efficiency perspective, and delivering a better product to the customer and the candidate, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. And then I would add cost. In addition, right? So because AI can provide significant efficiency along the way, we want to make sure that their return on investment or overall operating cost could come down, and then make sure that they experience the savings along the way.
Yeah. So where do you see the job market moving today? That's I know you're not an economist, and we've all got opinions, but we're, based on your customer base, and your perspective, where do you think things are headed in this frontline space?
Yeah, so during COVID, obviously especially on the frontline side, there had been significant hiring just because everyone was dealing with worker shortage issues. That they had to make sure that they look at many different options to find workers. And then post-COVID, there was some sort of correction where the inflation rate is high, interest rate went up, and then there's every operating managers or talent acquisitions, they're from the tops down kind of under heavy scrutiny around budgeting, right? Tightening belt and doing more with less. So there was some sort of correction. So where we are seeing is there's still a bit of a pent-up demand for hiring, frontline workers as the interest rate comes down, inflation rate stabilize. So we definitely see that going forward, companies will still have to figure out how to attract and retain talent. And I think the interesting thing about the worker side, so that's on the hiring side, but interesting things about on the worker front is that workers still have a lot of options, and with platforms like us or Uber, DoorDash, there are just so many options that workers can choose from. So the question is, where they will feel really appreciated and empowered and have continuous progression of their career. I think that is something that we'll have to see, and whether having some sort of kind of positioning around like why certain businesses are the right places for them to stay will continue to play an important role. Otherwise, we'll see this high rate of turnover continuously, and that is one of the hardest problems to solve.
That's a really interesting point. I think I spend a lot of time in the frontline space, and we spend a lot of time talking about fit, and that's for both the employee or candidate and the employer. So you mentioned it earlier. So there's sort of a basic, location, shift, pay, et cetera, right? That these are sort of core elements, and there are other core elements, skills-based, that, the role-based, if you will. If we're doing a better job on both sides and the employers have the opportunity to retain, then they've got to retain them. They've got to have more than just the pay and the
absolutely.
shift. And I think that gets into everything from culture and communication and experience, benefits. That's I think most employers would see that as a luxury, to be shifting a little more attention there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't, nobody's really talked about that implication. So that's an interesting thought about the future as this. So I do see the technology having that positive impact, and employers should be ready for that.
Yeah, and on that point, I think that's a really important point that you're bringing up, which is, I mentioned to you that we started as kind of the focusing on the on-demand, shorter term duration job type market. And we had millions of workers on our platform. So when we, expanded our offering to longer term type durations with high volume, we immediately thought, well, we have millions of workers on our platform. We can just directly go after them and say, hey, now we have these types of jobs that you can tap into. Now you have more options. And what surprised us was that not many were interested in longer term kind of the duration jobs, because they really wanted day-to-day flexibility. So then we were like, oh, wow, like we need to think differently. We need to go after different types of workers that actually want longer term job durations with specific companies. So, it was almost as if we had to build a new set of specifically targeting those workers. And these two types of pools were quite different, what they were looking for, their willingness to commute, the start time of the jobs, the engagement types. So it's been a fascinating journey. So we're learning a lot along the way.
Yeah, and that's a great segue back to where I'd like to take this, which is, so the future for Wonolo, crystal ball or roadmap, maybe one or both. How do you see the AI or the platform in general evolving, given where you see the markets headed?
Yeah, so we ultimately want to be the ultimate, like one-stop shop solution for anyone that want to leverage frontline workers to come into their, workplace and then have a fulfilling career. So, the way we internally think about it is kind of the X and Y axis. I mean, Y axis and Y axis, where X axis is the job duration, so shorter term all the way to full time, and then Y axis being the volume of workers. And then right now we are covering somewhere in the middle. So we are covering short to long term jobs, but just before the full time, the traditional kind of full-time hiring, and then our volume continues to go up as we scale and increase our capabilities. So ultimately we want to cover the whole spectrum, and we want to make sure that we get there incrementally. So that's kind of where we want to go. And obviously we want to expand the types of industries and verticals and skill sets that we can cover.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think I can see how one thing about the data that's required for AI, but also the learning that takes place via, I'm sure there's machine learning around your AI there. The system will be learning. It can almost see that evolution, on the map, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right. Yeah, with the benefit that we have, compared to say traditional job boards where they also have their AI as well, right? They provide ranking of the resumes to recruiters, and I think that's helpful. But what job boards are missing is, yes, they can provide the resumes, but they don't have the data on what happened to the candidates. Did they actually accept the job, or did they actually perform? How long the candidates stayed at the job? But we have the entire end-to-end data cycle, right? So we can tell, like, okay, this worker lives 20 minutes from the job location, how they performed at the interview, how early they showed up at the job, and then how long they stayed with the job. So based on that full data, we have much richer way to leverage ML to match different types of jobs with workers. And I think that's a significant benefit and advantage that we have that will make our AI much, I think, more robust and actually a better experience.
That's cool. I think I'm thinking about seasonal opportunities or jobs, and the system knowing that an assignment may be coming at an end, just even in general for a short-term role, and leveraging that data to then preemptively engage the candidate for the next opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's something that would be really powerful, and also from the candidate's perspective, the trust that's built up if the matching is good, right? I know that I'm on an assignment, I'm open to engage X days or weeks after this assignment, and I know that what Wonolo brings me will be relevant, will be the right pay, will be in the right place with the right shift, etc. That's powerful.
You're absolutely right. That's we're definitely scratching the surface of that, and we're getting better each day. But ultimately, if we can do that, where workers feel like I don't ever have to worry about not having a job, that would be a great place to be.
Yeah. Well, I could continue talking about frontline hiring and this technology all day, but we're at time, and it gives me a reason to bring you back. We can talk about how things evolved in the future, how the products evolved, and where the market is. Where can everyone go, or what's the best way to learn about Wonolo and this new product?
Yeah, please just check out our website. We'll continue to update with new features. And then if you have questions or thoughts or feedback, you can always reach out to me directly. I try to answer all the emails, and that is just my first name and at Wonolo. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, terrific. And Yong, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're really busy. Thanks for coming here and telling your story at WorkTech.
Thank you so much, George. I enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too. And thanks to everybody wherever you're watching or listening. And until next time, thank you.